Let's get this one over and done with, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the match reaction for Celtic 2, Rangers 3. That's right, a shock loss for Celtic at Celtic Park in the derby this afternoon. You could say a shock loss considering the confidence amongst Celtic supporters going into the weekend. The confidence that seemed on the manager's side going into the game this weekend after his comments at the press conference. Just not good enough today from Celtic in so many different levels. Not good enough from the players, not good enough from the manager. 9 goals in 3 games conceded against Rangers. We called the last defeat at Ibrox a bad day at the office. I said it was an anomaly what happened on that afternoon. Rangers beating us 3-0. I was pretty certain we wouldn't see that happen again. But when lightning strikes twice, it's not an anomaly anymore. There's a problem that needs to be considered, and that's a second time in a row, and for some maybe even a third time in a row, that Brendan Rodgers and Celtic have been outsmarted by Rangers, and this time with it happening at Celtic Park. It certainly raises a lot more questions, but we're going to try and cover all of it. Generally, if you just want my initial thoughts, it's just not good enough from Celtic today. Not good enough at all. Very disappointing, and especially when there was a point in that game I was pretty confident we'd kick on to win the game. When it went to 2-2, I was pretty certain we were going to do it. You looked at the flow of the game, the team that was on the ascendancy, you looked at the stats of the game. Even though I'm not a big stats guy, everything was pointing towards a Celtic win, and then in a moment of just stupidity, Alistair Johnston gives Rangers a golden opportunity to win the game out of nowhere, and everything flips. But we need to be better than that. We can't be a team at this level, being 16 points clear before the ball was kicked this afternoon, giving Rangers a 2-goal head start. You shouldn't be doing that, and that's the problem with Celtic in these last couple of derby games. Whoever's fault it is, whether it is the manager, whether it's the players, I think everybody's got to take the responsibility, especially the manager. We're not preparing ourselves in the correct fashion, it looks like. We've taken Rangers a bit too lightly, and maybe that naivety creeps into the support as well. I'll certainly hold my hands up and say that I was naive coming into today's game. I thought Celtic would walk all over Rangers and Barry Ferguson. I didn't see a world in which Barry Ferguson could come to Celtic Park and pull off the kind of result that he got in Turkey a couple of weeks ago. I thought we'd be able to handle it. And that naivety, I think we'd be ignorant to say that a lot, if we were lying, a lot of us thought that. You know, we'd be lying if we said we weren't. So I think there was naivety everywhere, and especially with it in the camp. I don't know what it is. We're going into these games, we're taking things too light. We're not answering up to Rangers when they get physical, and when it's like almost as if we're quiet and just letting it happen. We're letting ourselves be bullied, giving them a 2-goal head start, of course letting them trounce us at Ibrox in the last meeting as well. Something just seriously not right that does need to be addressed, and I don't think it's something that calls for a sort of rebuild or anything like that. Or I'm not going to go to the ends of the earth and say that it's time to rip things up and start again. But what we do need to rethink, and what we do need to look at, especially heading to Ibrox in a few weeks' time, and especially moving into next season, is the preparation for this game, for this derby fixture. We need to get back to the level it was at back in September when we beat them 3-0. That was the quality of performance I was expecting at Parkhead this afternoon, not what we were met with. And I don't know what's been lost in translation from then to change our approach in this game and to be as weak as we look. I think that's one of the significant things about the performance today. We just look really, really weak at times. But we need to find ourselves again. We need to back up our confidence, especially if you've got the manager going out and calling Rangers mints in a press conference the Friday beforehand. You need to be able to back that up. So he's been left with egg in his face today, Brendan Rodgers. And we've got a lot to make up for the next few weeks. With a treble on the line, with another derby to play at Ibrox, we have to be better than that, because it's bitter. It's bitter to take that today. Leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. And you know, this match reaction turns into more of a rant than anything, doesn't it? I'm not going to make excuses for Celtic's defeat today. Absolutely not. It's not an afternoon to make excuses. Rangers beat us. Fair play. They came to Celtic Park. They've done their job. They played a certain brand of football. They looked to waste time. They looked to slow things down. Every set piece or throw in, whatever they were getting, they were slowing the game down. And that was smart of them to do that. You could say to an extent that we were out-tacticked today by Rangers. So fair enough. I'm not going to make excuses. But a couple of the big things we've got to talk about today before I even get into dissecting the football that was played itself is the big absence of Callum McGregor, because I just want to get this done and out of the way so I don't need to bring it back up in this video. But what a miss he was this afternoon. Do I think that if him playing today would have stopped Celtic from getting beat? I'm not going to exactly stretch to that. We were still poor, and look, if you go off Callum McGregor's last couple of derby games, it's not as if he was fantastic in them. But there was a significant difference in the way that we played out today. We were lost. trying to play that ball out from the back. And if anything, I think that Brendan Rodgers should have took note of that earlier in the game. Half an hour into the game, you could see that it wasn't working. We were missing the cam head that was McGregor, not just from an offensive point of view, but defensively, we were lost without him. There was just this sense of erratic dysfunction around the Celtic team in that area he would usually patrol. We couldn't play it out. Players couldn't make a pass 5 yards in front of them. They were constantly giving the ball to Rangers. That extended to the goalkeeper and Kasper Schmeichel. And defensively, it seemed there was very little organisation. It seemed like players were confused on where they should be going. There was no calmness there. And I think a lot of that usually comes from McGregor. Now, I trust in Vickers to lead this Celtic team because he's been unbelievable, best centre-half of the country in the last decade. And I trust in him to lead that Celtic team. But I think without McGregor there to really pull the strings as a captain, you could see the difference it was making, both going forward and defensively. It was a massive absence today. And what needs to be taken most from that is why on earth people want to see McGregor dropped. I never know. I don't know. And I don't want to turn this match reaction from the game we should be talking about to the I told you so about McGregor that some people might want to make this. That's not what this video is. But you need to have another think about things if you think that McGregor's a player that should be dropped or replaced anytime soon at Celtic, because his influence in the team is so underappreciated, and you notice it in games like this. Without him today, we were lost. And you could see that players, especially Johnston, who was very guilty of this, you could see that players who, when they were approaching McGregor's sort of section of the field, that kind of area he would normally patrol and walk the ball out from, players were turning and passing it back rather than trying to take it forward, even a few yards. They were turning and they were passing it back and they were passing it sideways. Whereas that would usually be McGregor's job to walk the ball out. And he wasn't there to do that today. He was a huge miss. Don't get me wrong, Trusty, big miss as well, but I thought Navrowski stepped up really, really well today. McGregor's miss. And Engels just wasn't ready to be thrown into that role and to be that player today. People will say, oh, he's played 10 minutes doing it against St Mirren here, they've been trying it out, Rodgers has been giving him opportunities to do it. There's a big difference between giving him 10 minutes at the end of the Hibs game, or 10 minutes at the end of the St Mirren game, or 10 minutes at the end of an Aberdeen game at that McGregor role than actually having to play it, especially in a game as intense as the Derby. And the middle of the park is where the game is won and lost. To have him thrown in there, I don't think he was ready for that today, and I think you could see that in his performance. I don't think Engels was dreadful by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that in that role he just wasn't ready to do it confidently. And McGregor was such a huge miss for us. But enough of talking about the misses and whatnot. We've got to talk about the football itself. That's why we're here. I really don't want to talk about the first half, if I'm being quite honest. It was one of the worst 45 minutes of football I've seen all season, and one of the worst 45 minutes of football I've seen in the Derby at Celtic Park, no doubt about that. If anything, I would go to say that the 45 in that first half was just as hard to watch as the two 45s at Ibrox back in January. Now, I know we made chances, I know we ended the half with 72% of the ball. Doesn't matter though, when you're ending the half with nothing to show for it, and with 5 minutes of being on the ascendancy towards the end, it's still tough to watch. And it was just a dreadful performance from Celtic in all aspects. We start the game in the worst possible fashion, conceding. Why they get the space and the header to score, I don't know. But that's not the first time that's happened this season. You know, there's been times we've spoke about this. I mean, we're looking to the Bayern Munich game as the most recent example. And I know the levels are different. When you're talking about Rangers, you're talking about Bayern Munich, Champions League, champions of Germany soon to be, and all the rest of it. But you still need to get the basic principles right in your defence. And what we learned in that game was you don't leave players unmarked at a set piece. Harry Kane punished us that day. We got punished this time round, albeit by, I think it was Raskin that scored, wasn't it? Yeah, Raskin who scored the first goal. You can't leave players open. Doesn't matter if it's Harry Kane or Nicholas Raskin. And we get punished for it. We get punished, and it's just the worst way to start the game, because what that done for Rangers was, number one, give them confidence, which they didn't need, because they already started the game pretty well. But it also gave them a reason just to set up in a way that was going to frustrate Celtic, and we've seen that, because even leading up to the goal, in the opening 3 minutes of the game, before they scored their goal, they were walking at such a slow pace to get every ball for a throw-in. They were taking every fucking throw-in and every corner and every dead ball situation in that opening 3 minutes that they had with such a slow pace. And they were just frustrating the fans, they were frustrating Celtic, and then they were catching us. They would move, you'd see them walk over, go and get the ball for the throw, and then bang, take it, because we're sitting there thinking they're going to take all day. And that was smart of them to do that. They caught us and they got the goal very early days, and it's just the worst way we could have started that game. And Celtic didn't really have the answer. We had a couple of good shots on goal. I remember Hatate being very unlucky. Buckland makes a good save. Jota very unlucky with a shot, an ambitious one. I thought from my seat it was going in. But apart from that, we just weren't offering anything, and there seemed to be a real nervous feeling around the Celtic team. They couldn't pass the ball out. We weren't being ambitious enough, and that was going across the whole back line that we touched on in the absence of McGregor, and it was stretching across the midfield. The midfield were non-existent this afternoon. All three of them. Well, in the first half, we'll talk about the second half as a different entity in a moment. In that 45, McCowan was terrible. Hatate was rushing everything that he was trying to do. Trying these one-touch passes, not taking his time, not assessing, not looking for the pass, just try to get rid of it, try to be fancy with it, wasn't working. And Engels, as I said, just didn't have that confidence to do the role that McGregor normally does. So the midfield was non-existent. McCowan kept running the ball into Rangers players. And then Johnston, every time he'd get the ball out wide, you expect him to try and take it forward into a bit of space. He was turning round. And he was giving it to Vickers. And we were just really, really poor. We weren't creating anything for ourselves. Maida being up front was obviously a focal point of the preparations for Rangers this week, because we couldn't get any joy through Maida in the first half. They were really taking care of him. We were forced to take the ball out wide with Kuhn and Jota, and then they weren't really getting much joy, especially Kuhn, who struggled in that first half. I mean, it says it all about the nervousness of Celtic in that first half, that even Kasper Schmeichel, who has been so good and so calm and so composed all season, is almost gifting a goal to Rangers with passing it to their fucking centre forward. So there was just the start of the game didn't help at all, but Celtic were all over the place. I don't know what Rodgers was aiming for, and he didn't really touch on it in his post-match press conference post-match interview about what went wrong in that first half performance. He just said that we couldn't get going, but it was more than just couldn't get going. It was far more than that. We were really, really poor. Some people should have been off at half time. One of them was Nicholas Kuhn, but a real shock that some of the other ones made a whole 90 minutes out of the game today. We really needed something to change in the second half. And the most frustrating part of this match reaction is it did change in the second half. Because whatever was said at the half-time team talk worked. Whatever changed at half-time worked. And that's what's most frustrating about today's game, is the fact that whatever we did change and whatever tactical tweaks Rodgers made, they did work. But why did we wait to the 45th minute to play like that? Why did we give Rangers a 2-0 head start? And then why did we go on to throw it all away? All that hard work undone. And I get it, I don't want to be too heavy on Alistair Johnston, even though, he was bad today. It's a slip. It happens in football. It's a mistake, and he'll be really sore about that tonight. I guarantee he'll be really disappointed and angry at himself for slipping the way that he does and giving the goal away. But we do everything right at half time to change the game up, to change what we're doing, to get back into it, just to fucking throw it away. It's so frustrating, and that's the most frustrating part of today's game. Why are we giving them a 2-goal head start, man? So we come out second half and make the big change in Ida, which, look, listen, Ida came on today, wasn't a vintage performance. By no means. I don't even remember him touching the ball, to be quite honest. But he was needed. We needed him on the park, because we didn't have a player in that first half in the forward line that was able to maybe just bring the ball down out of air, hold it up for even a moment, or just bring it down altogether. But that was one of the things about the first half. It was annoying me. The amount of times we just let the ball, here it comes. And our Rangers player would come in and get physical and win it back. And we really needed Ida in the second half of that. But more importantly, what we needed Ida in the second half for was to get Maida out wide. He needed to go out wide. As I said, first half he was getting no joy. And almost instantly as the second half begins, you notice the difference with Maida being through the left. And that's not me advocating for saying the Maida through the middle project doesn't work. It didn't work, blah, blah, blah. It didn't work this afternoon. And that's it. It's been great up until this afternoon. But that's because Rangers worked really hard in making sure that he couldn't play through the middle. But when we shifted him out left, and especially when Rangers stretched themselves over to a back three, it really fucking worked, because players were having to go over and support Tavernier on that left-hand side. It was dragging people out wide, and then that would allow for centre midfielders like Hatate, when he scores the goal, to drop in and find the gaps. So I don't know why we don't pick up on these things earlier. I don't know why we didn't change things earlier. Now, that's not me saying we should have hooked somebody in the first half to supplement Maida over on the left, but there was clearly things we could have done earlier in the game to stop them from getting 2 goals ahead of us. And in the second half, we do well. We find our first goal. It's Dyson Maeda, which a magic header, gets another goal. Brilliant. Places kind of, momentum's picking up. Every time we get a bit of momentum, though, Rangers get a man down or they get a throw in, they slow the game down. We don't let it stop us. We're in total control. We get the equaliser. Rio Hitati, fantastic, brilliant. Thank you, Rio. And then we throw it all away. And that's just so frustrating. I feel like I sound like a broken record here, just talking about how we threw it all away. But just, we sorted it out, man. Players started playing better apart from fucking Johnston. Players started playing better. We looked more confident. We were being optimistic. We were just moving the ball nicely, creating chances, and we'll talk about the end, shall we? Let's get that done with. I don't know if some of this team were out in the lash last night. But Johnston, what happened, son? Somebody who's been so reliable for Celtic all season long, somebody who's been so reliable since coming to Celtic in general, and somebody who really rises to the occasion in these sorts of fixtures. And today, how did he make it to the full 90? And this is what I mean with Rodgers having to take, the buck stops with Rodgers at the end of the day. He's the manager, he makes the changes in game, he makes the changes at half time. And I get it, the player behind Johnston is not that great. Anthony Ralston, it's hardly an ideal substitution. But in that situation, you cannot let a player playing that badly play the 90 minutes. And it cost us the game. And this is what I mean. I apologise, Alistair, if you somehow see this video. I do not mean to pile it down on you. You're not the sole reason for Celtic losing today. But Rodgers should not be keeping Johnston on the park when he's playing like that. And he's sat and watched, slipped in his arse. And then even when he tries to make the recovery, he makes a cunt of it. His tackle's too rash. His attempted tackle, I should say, is too rash. Rangers players find himself in space. Great finish by all accounts. But Johnston shouldn't be on the park at that point. Do I think that goal happens if Ralston's on the park? Probably not, because I don't think Ralston would have slipped in his arse. Johnston's just so low in confidence, just nothing happening for him in the game. Let him play the 90, and that's what happens. We're punished for it. It's a slip, I get it. It happens to the best of us. But he shouldn't have seen 90 minutes today. Just shouldn't have seen 90 minutes. For so many different reasons. Even when we were playing our best in that second half, once again, Johnston was resulting to what he was doing in the first half. Whenever he had a chance to maybe go up the right-hand side with the ball, he's turning round and giving it to Vickers. He's not taking the ball on the turn and moving forward. No. He's going the other way and giving it to Vickers. And it's just not good enough. You've got to have a bit of optimism in your attacking play, especially when you're chasing a win. And yet Johnston he just seems so out of it, so unfazed, and just, I don't know, just wasn't going for him at all. And it's disappointing. It's a tough one to take. We lose the game late on, and there was just no hope from there. No hope at all. So there's a lot of work to be done at Lennoxtown preparing for this next derby. Of course, we've got a couple of games before that, or a few games before that, I should say. But we can't go into another derby and play like that. We cannot let it happen, because Rodgers has looked like a bit of a dick over the last couple of them. And you know me, I'm Rodgers fan number one, and I will defend him to the end of the earth. When players are passing it straight to the opposition and such, there's only so much he can do. But at the same time, the preparation clearly isn't right. It's just clearly not right, and it hasn't been for the last 2 or 3 derbies. What happened after that? What went wrong in comparison to the first game when we beat them 3-0? Could have been about 5 or 6. What changed? Has he been found out? I don't know, but that's Rodgers' job to keep them guessing and to change things and to make it less predictable. Players in the park also have a responsibility to adhere to that, but Rodgers is the one, as I said, the buck stops with him. Disappointing today. Really, really, really disappointing. And in the grand scheme of things, of course, it doesn't mean much. We're 13 points clear. The league is won. We're still on course for a treble. But we could be winning a treble with Rangers beating us twice in the one season. We could be winning the league title with Rangers beating us twice. Perhaps 3 times in the one season if we don't sort it out. And listen, that doesn't take away any of the success that Celtic have seen this season. At the end of the day, they're celebrating a win at Celtic Park. They deserve to, but they're celebrating in the face of Celtic potentially winning a treble. But it'll always be a bit of a taint on the season if they manage to beat us 3 times. So we can't let that happen. I'll go, yeah, great, treble, who cares? But at the same time, I'll go, well, they beat us 3 times, so we cannot let it happen. We can't. And a lot of players need to look at themselves after today. And Rodgers needs to look at himself after today. Stop going in saying this and that in press conferences and then not backing it up. But aye, anyway, I've yapped for too long on this. Take care of yourselves. See you. I'm away to Belgium tomorrow, so hopefully I'll see you. We'll soon see. Right, take care. See you all next time.